Beloved, hear me clearly. When God speaks, mountains move and destinies shift. This is not just another moment. This is a prophetic announcement from the throne room of heaven. The winds of divine rearrangement are already blowing in your favor. God has seen your tears. He has heard your prayers, and he is setting the stage for your elevation. Before the 29th of October, something supernatural will take place, not by your might, not by your strength, but by the Spirit of the living God. You've been wondering why certain people are acting strange, why doors that once opened easily are now resisting, and why relationships that used to feel familiar now feel heavy. But listen, divine separation is not rejection, it's redirection. God is removing distractions, dismantling alliances that no longer serve your assignment, and repositioning you for visibility and victory. Some people had to leave so that your name could rise. When God decides to elevate you, he begins by rearranging everything around you. Nothing in your environment remains untouched when heaven has scheduled your promotion. The shift doesn't always come with noise or announcement. It comes quietly through circumstances, changes, and transitions that you may not even understand at first. Suddenly, what used to feel comfortable begins to feel tight. What once made sense begins to feel uncertain. That's not confusion. That's transformation. God is moving pieces, realigning connections, and reordering relationships to make sure nothing stands in the way of your next dimension. Divine rearrangement means that God is not only preparing a place for you, but he's preparing you for that place. Sometimes we pray for elevation, but we're surrounded by people or situations that can't handle the weight of where we're going. So God begins to shift things. The environment you once thrived in may no longer sustain you. The conversations you used to enjoy may no longer inspire you. The people you leaned on may begin to pull away. It's not rejection. It's realignment. Heaven knows what's required for your next season, and God is making sure every detail aligns with his divine blueprint. When this rearrangement starts, don't resist it. The shaking, the sudden changes, the unexpected transitions, they are signs that the atmosphere is preparing for your breakthrough. What you think is falling apart is actually falling into place. The relationships that end, the opportunities that close, the spaces that become uncomfortable are all part of a heavenly orchestration. Every shift you're experiencing right now is a necessary move on God's divine chessboard. He's positioning you where favor can find you, where destiny can identify you, and where purpose can sustain you. Sometimes divine rearrangement exposes the true motives of people around you. It's in moments of transition that you begin to see who was genuinely for you and who was simply attached to your assignment. God will allow certain situations to unfold not to break you, but to reveal hearts. Some people can only handle the version of you that serves their comfort. But when you begin to grow, when God starts to enlarge your territory, those same people may start to resist you. Don't take it personally, take it prophetically. The shift is necessary. Every divine rearrangement is a sacred movement of destiny. God removes what's temporary to establish what's eternal. You might not understand why certain people are distancing themselves, but heaven does. The divine rearrangement ensures that only those who are meant to walk into your promise with you will remain. God doesn't want you carrying dead weight into a living season. He doesn't want you dragging outdated connections into a divine chapter that demands focus, faith, and fire. So he starts moving things, stirring hearts, and resetting relationships. When God rearranges, he also renews your perspective. He opens your eyes to see that what looked like loss was actually a lift. What appeared as a closed door was divine protection from a place that couldn't contain your potential. The rearrangement forces you to let go of comfort zones that have become cages. It pushes you to walk by faith instead of familiarity. Every time you surrender what no longer fits, God replaces it with something that fulfills. The rearrangement may feel uncomfortable, but it's orchestrated to position you in places of influence and impact. As God rearranges things, he also deals with timing. There are moments you feel delayed, but the delay is divine. It's the waiting room between your preparation and your manifestation. During this rearrangement, he's not only shifting your surroundings, he's shaping your spirit. He's removing impatience, refining your discernment, and strengthening your faith. Because where he's taking you next requires maturity and wisdom that only come from seasons of pruning and waiting. The rearrangement is not punishment, it's preparation for permanence. Sometimes God will isolate you before he elevates you. That isolation is not abandonment, it's incubation. He's setting you apart so he can deposit what others can't see. When divine rearrangement begins, solitude often becomes your companion. But in that solitude, God whispers strategies, downloads instructions, and reveals mysteries about your next level. You begin to understand that your elevation isn't just about position, it's about transformation. You are being molded into the vessel that can carry the weight of your destiny with grace, power, and wisdom. Every divine rearrangement breaks old patterns and births new possibilities. You'll notice that old conversations no longer satisfy your spirit. Gossip begins to irritate you. Distractions begin to lose their pull. That's because God is shifting your appetite to match your assignment. He's removing the desire for what's ordinary so you can hunger for what's extraordinary. You're not the same person you used to be. And that's exactly the point. Divine rearrangement doesn't just change your environment. It changes you. And when everything around you starts to look uncertain, when familiar faces fade and known paths close, remember this: heaven is in motion. God is arranging divine connections, aligning unseen resources, and orchestrating supernatural timing. The rearrangement is working in your favor. Everything that's shifting is doing so to position you exactly where you belong, in the place where purpose, promise, and promotion collide. Separation is one of the hardest parts of destiny, yet it is one of the most necessary. When God begins to separate you, it's not because he's punishing you, it's because he's protecting what he placed inside of you. There are seasons when you'll feel the sting of distance, when familiar faces fade and comfortable connections crumble. But those very moments are divine indicators that heaven is shifting your path. What feels like loss is often the first sign of divine movement. God separates to save you from what can no longer support your future. The people who once walked with you may not have the capacity to go where you are going. So God creates space between you and them for your own preservation. When divine separation happens, it rarely makes sense at first. You begin to question what you did wrong, why relationships are changing, or why you suddenly feel disconnected from things that once brought you joy. But if you could see what heaven sees, you would understand that separation is God's way of clearing the path ahead. Some connections were seasonal, not permanent. Some people were assignments, not alignments. God will allow them to fade because holding on too long would hinder the blessing that's about to unfold in your life. He removes distractions disguised as companionship and illusions that masquerade as loyalty. Many times, we beg God to bless us while refusing to let go of what he's trying to remove. We cling to old friendships, toxic environments, and stagnant places because we confuse comfort with covenant. But when God says it's time to move, obedience is your only safe response. Separation is the proof that you've outgrown the level you were once on. It means the grace that sustained those connections is lifting, and heaven is calling you higher. Every time you try to force yourself to stay where you no longer belong, you delay the manifestation of what's next. There is purpose in every distance that God creates. He is not isolating you to harm you. He is isolating you to highlight you. Sometimes he will allow people to misunderstand you so that you stop relying on their validation. Sometimes he will close doors that you were once celebrated through so you can learn that your worth is not tied to applause. Divine separation teaches you to stand firm in your identity even when no one else understands your journey. It trains your spirit to find peace in God's plan rather than people's presence. You may not realize it, but every separation brings revelation. You start to see who was connected to your destiny and who was simply connected to your comfort. Some people loved you for what you could give them, not for who you were becoming. Others stayed as long as your success served them. God will separate you from those who would drain your strength, deplete your faith, and distract your focus. He's removing the weight of unhealthy attachments so that your spirit can breathe again. What you lose in company, you gain in clarity. Separation also purifies your motives. It forces you to evaluate why you wanted certain people to stay and why you feared their absence. Sometimes we attach our identity to relationships instead of revelation. God uses separation to bring you back to yourself, to remind you that your value isn't in who stands beside you, but in who stands within you. As the unnecessary begins to fall away, you'll find that peace increases, focus sharpens, and vision becomes clearer. What once felt like heartbreak becomes the very thing that unlocks your healing. When God separates you, He is not leaving you empty. He is making room for divine connections. The void left behind will not remain vacant for long. Heaven is preparing replacements, people who will push you, not pull you back. These are destiny partners, not emotional placeholders. They will speak life into you, stand with you in prayer, and help you steward the next level of your calling. But before they arrive, the space must be cleared. The separation must take place to create room for new assignments and holy alignments. Divine separation also tests your faith. Can you still trust God when it feels like everyone is walking away? Can you still praise Him when you don't understand the process? Faith is refined in the furnace of isolation. It's in those lonely places that you discover the depth of your trust. When you have no one left to lean on but God, but that's when you realize He was enough all along. The strength that emerges from that realization becomes unshakable. You walk differently, think differently, and pray differently because you now know that what left was never meant to last. As the separation continues, your atmosphere begins to change. The noise quiets, the chaos settles, the distractions fade. Suddenly, your spirit becomes sensitive to heaven's voice again. You begin to hear instructions you couldn't hear before because the crowd was too loud. You see visions you couldn't see before because your focus was divided. Separation doesn't just change who is around you. It changes what is within you. It births a level of discernment that only solitude can teach. And as you walk through this divine process, understand that every tear you shed is watering the soil of your next season. The people who walked away didn't derail your destiny. They defined it. The doors that closed didn't end your story. They redirected it. The silence that follows separation is not the absence of God. It's the sound of Him building something greater behind the scenes. Before every great promotion, there must first come a pruning. Pruning is the divine process where God cuts away everything that no longer contributes to your growth. It's uncomfortable, often confusing, but always necessary. When God begins to prune your life, He's not punishing you. He's preparing you. He sees what you cannot see. He knows which branches have stopped bearing fruit, which connections have expired, and which habits are quietly draining your strength. In His wisdom, He removes what you thought you needed so that you can become everything He has called you to be. Pruning doesn't feel pleasant while it's happening. It's the season when things seem to be taken away, when doors close without warning, when people you depended on suddenly distance themselves. You might find yourself asking, why now? Or why me? But pruning is not a sign that you've done something wrong. It's proof that you are growing. God only prunes what is alive. The areas being trimmed are the very ones capable of producing more, but they must first be refined, redirected, and renewed. During pruning, God deals with attachments that can no longer go forward with you. There are relationships that were fruitful in a previous season, but have now reached their limit. There are habits that once brought you comfort, but now hinder your consistency. There are thought patterns that kept you safe when you were small, but will suffocate you at your next level. So God takes his divine shears and begins to cut. Every snip may sting, but each one is shaping you for something greater. Pruning also reveals what your life has been rooted in. It shows whether your trust is in people, possessions, or the promises of God. When things start falling away, you are forced to depend solely on him. The pruning season strips you of what's superficial so that your roots can dig deeper into his presence. This is when faith matures. This is when character is built. This is when you learn that growth doesn't come from what you gain, but from what you're willing to let go of. In the process of pruning, God redefines what success looks like. He shifts your focus from quantity to quality. You may have to release multiple opportunities so that you can focus on the one that truly aligns with your purpose. You may have to walk away from a crowd so you can hear a clear voice. You may have to sacrifice immediate gratification for long-term glory. Every cut is calculated. Every loss is strategic. Heaven's pruning is never random. It is precise and intentional. Sometimes pruning feels like isolation, but it's actually incubation. God hides you for a time so that he can work in you privately before revealing you publicly. While others see absence, God sees preparation. He's teaching you discipline, humility, and endurance. He's removing pride and replacing it with purity. The pruning season is where you learn to steward your gifts wisely and to manage your emotions maturely. It's where you outgrow the version of yourself that was only ready for survival, not success. Pruning doesn't only involve people or opportunities. It also includes your mindset. God begins to confront your limiting beliefs, your fears, your doubts, and your inner resistance. He removes the lies you've accepted about yourself and replaces them with truth. He stretches your faith by allowing you to experience what looks like lack so that you can see his abundance. He removes your reliance on circumstances so that your confidence rests on his word alone. Pruning forces transformation from the inside out. In this season, your life may feel bare, but barrenness is often the setup for blooming. The gardener knows that once the unnecessary is removed, the remaining branches can receive more light, more strength, and more nourishment. Likewise, once God clears the clutter, your spirit becomes more open to divine inspiration. You begin to dream again, plan again, believe again. The same places that felt empty will soon overflow, but only after the pruning has done its work. You may look around and think that too much has been taken from you, but what's being removed is nothing compared to what's being made room for. God is exchanging your lesser for his greater. He's clearing space for promises to manifest, for blessings to unfold, for new fruit to grow. It might look like you're losing, but heaven is simply resetting your foundation so that what's coming next will not crumble under pressure. The pruning ensures that when you do rise, you'll be ready to sustain it. And while pruning demands patience, it also guarantees power. Every season of cutting is followed by a season of flourishing. Every tear shed in surrender becomes the water that nourishes your next harvest. The pain of pruning is temporary, but the strength it produces is eternal. Through this divine process, God ensures that you will not just grow. You will grow strong, steady, and unshakable. When God begins to move you into your next dimension, one of the first things he does is expose what's been hidden. He begins to uncover the motives of hearts, the secret thoughts of those around you, and the quiet conversations that were never meant for your ears. This is not to hurt you, but to heal you from deception. Hidden enemies can operate only in darkness, and once the light of truth shines, their power is broken. God will never allow you to rise while surrounded by false loyalty, so he exposes the hidden to protect the holy. What you thought were allies may reveal themselves as obstacles, and what you thought were friendships may prove to be assignments meant to distract you from destiny. There are seasons when you begin to feel a strange tension around people who once celebrated you. It's not your imagination. Your spirit is discerning what your eyes have yet to see. The atmosphere begins to shift because your elevation disturbs the comfort of those who were never meant to go higher with you. Jealousy hides behind smiles, envy disguises itself as advice, and betrayal dresses in politeness. But God sees it all. And before he takes you to the next level, he removes the masks. The exposure may sting, but it is necessary for your protection. When God starts revealing the hidden, you will notice that he doesn't always do it loudly. Sometimes it's a sudden change in conversation, a hesitation in support, or a subtle pulling away. These are divine hints that the season of certain connections is over. Don't ignore the signs because you want to keep the peace. Peace built on pretense will always cost you your purpose. God allows discomfort to draw your attention to what's been pretending to be aligned, but is secretly opposing your advancement. The exposure of hidden enemies is a form of mercy. God is showing you who they are before you place your trust too deeply. He's saving you from future heartbreak by allowing you to see truth in the present. It's painful when people you loved or helped turn out to be the very ones who spoke against you, but that pain becomes the evidence that you were chosen. Hidden enemies don't attack the ordinary. They attack what carries weight. Their opposition is confirmation that your anointing is increasing. You must understand that exposure is not meant to make you bitter. It's meant to make you better. When you see the truth, don't respond in anger. Respond in awareness. God is not showing you